Today, one of Donald Trump's co-defendants, Harrison Floyd, was back in Georgia state court. In an echo of what we have seen from former President Trump himself, Mr. Floyd has been making posts on social media discussing and even tagging witnesses in this case. And prosecutors allege that that could be witness intimidation. The issue is seen as so important that Fulton County DA Fani Willis herself showed up to make the state's case. And she was incredibly direct.
The state is requesting, so that there's no mistake as to what we're asking, that his bond be revoked and that he be remanded back into custody for violating 3 conditions of the bond.
DA Willis asked for Harrison Floyd to be put back in jail for making statements that could intimidate witnesses. Now, ultimately, the judge in this case denied that request and instead imposed a broader and stricter order limiting Mr. Floyd's speech. The judge ordered Floyd to not make any public statements concerning any co-defendants or witnesses and to delete the social media posts where he had made those statements already. But the thing that I think is important here is that jail was on the table. Harrison Floyd is charged with being essentially a pawn in Donald Trump's larger alleged plot to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And Floyd's social media reach is puny compared to Trump's massive bully pulpit, but nonetheless, jail was on the table and very much could still be on the table in the future for Harrison Floyd. Yet jail time is not even really being considered for Mr. Trump, either in Fulton County, Georgia, where his own bond conditions are more specific than Harrison Floyd's were, or in federal court in D.C., where a little over a month ago, Trump was given a narrow gag order in Jack Smith's federal election interference case. Now, the broad strokes of that gag order barred Trump from doing anything that could intimidate witnesses, threaten court staff, or threaten prosecutors involved in that case. Trump's legal team has managed to get that gag order frozen twice now, while it appeals to higher courts. And you might think that given the fact that Trump is very actively appealing this gag order, that he would try to somehow show it wasn't needed and wouldn't do anything that could be seen as intimidating witnesses or court staff or Jack Smith and his prosecutorial team. But you would be wrong. This was Trump at a campaign event earlier this month.
We have deranged Jack Smith. Have you ever heard of him? He's a lovely man. You ever see him with the purple little thing? He's a lovely man. The Trump-hating prosecutor in the case, his wife and family despise me much more than he does, and he decides, I think he's about a 10. They're about a 15 on a scale of 10.
If that mention of Jack Smith's family was not a clear enough threat, Trump followed it up 2 days later with this post on Truth Social. Deranged Jack Smith will end up in a mental institution by the time of my next term as president, and by the time that is successfully completed. Trump has also name-checked and posted intimidating statements about potential witnesses, including his former Attorney General Bill Barr, his former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and his former Vice President Mike Pence, as well as his former lawyers Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell. But again, the idea of revoking Trump's bond, of punishing him with jail time for this kind of intimidation, that has yet to be put on the table in either case. And while Harrison Floyd's hearing today ended with the judge imposing a broader and stricter order controlling Harrison Floyd's speech, Donald Trump had his own hearing about his gag order yesterday, and the end result was that the appeals court may narrow Trump's gag order. One of the judges on the panel said they have to use a careful scalpel to carve out a narrow order that protects witnesses while not inhibiting Trump as a presidential candidate. So you can see the legal system is treading very, very carefully here. One would say maybe even lightly. And the net result of that is that Donald Trump gets to have it both ways. At campaign rallies, Trump gets to use the cases against him to score political points.
Every time I'm indicted, I consider it a great badge of honor because I'm being indicted for you. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And meanwhile, in court, he is using his campaign as a shield to ensure treatment that no other defendant would get. So how is Donald Trump held accountable here? And how can our legal system protect the people he could intimidate in the meantime? I mean, this is, after all, what he posted today.
Why do you think that Fonnie and Alvin and Letitia and, of course, the deranged one, Jack Smith, took so long and very publicly, they leaked everything, started their work so late? They could have started it years ago. It's called election interference and prosecutorial misconduct.
Joining me now is former acting U.S. Solicitor General Neal Katyal. Neal, thank you for helping me understand how the court is approaching the complicated subject, the complicated defendant that is Donald Trump. First, let me ask you what your expectation is for this appeals court ruling on the gag order. Is it going to be narrower? Just how punitive is it going to be?
So the argument yesterday, Alex, was in front of our nation's second highest court, three extraordinarily well-prepared, well-respected judges. And I think the ultimate bottom line was that Trump's lawyer could not answer the simple questions that the court posed, including, like, what is your standard? Can criminal defendants just say anything they want and the like? I think that basically at the end of the argument, I was left thinking that Trump will lose. For the first time in American history, a former president will be gagged by a court. I think the order will be narrowed a little bit because Judge Chutkan, who's the trial judge, said that Trump couldn't attack the prosecutor, Jack Smith. And I think there was some cause for concern among the judges. That wasn't really something Trump's lawyer pushed as much, but it's something that the court brought up on its own. And so I think ultimately, though, Trump loses and Donald Trump will be gagged. And if he violates those gag orders, we will get into the situation of possible jail time being on the line.
Can you talk more about that, Neal? Possible jail time? I mean, it really feels like the courts have gone out of their way to not go there as yet. Understandably, I understand it's complicated, but at the same time, he isn't being treated like any other defendant here, and he is loath to obey anybody's orders. I wonder if you think we are going to get to the point where there has to be a real robust discussion about jailing the former president.
So, Alex, I could not agree with you more about what you just said. I mean, if you want to see unequal treatment in our judicial system, look no further than the way the courts have treated Donald Trump or indeed his co-defendant today. They're afforded leniency and second chances that the average defendant could never dream of. And time again, we're seeing Trump and his co-defendants get the benefit of the doubt. And I do think that that patience is wearing thin among the courts as well. And so I do think that if Trump, after this new revised gag order is imposed, violates it in an intentional way, which, I suspect he very well may do because he's incapable of following, any sort of rules, decorum, good behavior and the like, I do think that we're going to see that. And, yesterday I was talking, Alex, with Lawrence O'Donnell, and I said, look, the country's watching this gag order hearing, and whatever Donald Trump does, other defendants in other cases are going to do, whether it's a mafia case, a drug case, whatever, that this sets a precedent for norm-breaking behavior. And lo and behold, we didn't even have to wait a day to see the corrosive effects of Trump's arguments already, because in Fulton County, Georgia, Harrison Floyd was basically saying, yeah, it's my First Amendment right to intimidate witnesses. This is, out of control already. And I do think the courts will put it back in, put this back in the bottle, the toothpaste in the tube or whatever, but they have to act quickly.
I want to ask you kind of like a broader ethical question, which is the notion of running for office and how deferential you think the courts should be on anything from a gag order to the scheduling of the trials. I mean, Fani Willis made the point that, what did she say? It would be a really sad day if when you're under investigation for a shoplifting charge, you go run for city council to stop the investigation. We joke about, to some degree, I think there is a little levity embedded in that, but it's not an unserious possibility. The idea that you shield yourself from prosecution by running for higher office. Trump is the first of many. Trump breaks the mold, I should say, but could be, at the vanguard here. And I wonder how, concerned the court should be about the way in which he is effectively weaponizing his candidacy for his defense.
They should be gravely concerned, Alex. I think you're exactly right. I mean, remember, Donald Trump escaped indictment before when he was president because he said, and Bill Barr, his attorney general, said, a sitting president cannot be indicted. So then he leaves office, not necessarily voluntarily, but he eventually leaves. And now his argument is a guy who's running for president can't be indicted. And then if he wins, he's going to say again, a sitting president can't be indicted. There's no more fundamental principle in our law. We go back to the early Anglo-American history, go back to what our founders thought. No person is above the law. That is, why we fought the revolution against King George III. What Donald Trump is trying to do is reenact it. And he's enacting it through these, bogus immunity claims from prosecution. And then, as you say, Alex, also by the scheduling. Like, it is baffling to me why Georgia is going to trial in August of 2024 on the Fulton County case. I don't understand that. Samuel Bankman-Fried was, indicted just a few months ago. He's already been convicted. I had the privilege of doing the prosecution, the George Floyd prosecution against Derek Chauvin. That murder happened 3 years ago. We've already, had the trial, had the appeal, and had the United States Supreme Court yesterday reject Derek Chauvin's appeal. Why Trump gets these massive delays, both in the Fulton County cases as well as in the Mar-a-Lago case on stolen documents, is beyond me. I can't begin to understand it.
Yeah, the system may be rigged in Trump's favor, which is effectively the opposite of what he's been saying.